this week's video. Now, coming up on this week's video, some wah guitar, some fast nonsense on guitar, and some completely gratuitous finger tapping. For those of you who've seen my channel before, you may have spotted that I'm not wearing glasses. Now that's because I've just got back from the opticians, got some new contact lenses, and I don't know how they've managed this, it's quite a miracle, but these ones I can actually see through, so I've still got them in from the trial. I don't normally bother wearing them during the day, I only wear them for gigs, but these ones, as I can actually see through them, I've kept them in. So I had a busy weekend gigging last weekend. I did 3 gigs on electric guitar and 1 on acoustic guitar. The acoustic guitar was actually playing in a wedding ceremony. It was very nice, it was outside, it was overlooking the South Downs in the south of the UK. And as we were setting up, I got into a conversation with the videographer, and he came over and he went, he said, I don't normally do weddings. I said, oh right, what do you normally do? He said, I normally film porn. So that was interesting. In all the years I've been doing this kind of work, you can still be surprised. Anyway, through these 3 gigs, I started off, first gig, modeler with in-ears. Second gig, my lightweight amp, this one here, my Milkman. And the third gig, I used my very heavy amp, which is underneath it, my Fender Vibra King. And it was interesting, the progression through it. And it got me to thinking. Now, I don't have any footage of the first gig with the Quad Cortex because I've filmed gigs before, you know, clipping the GoPro onto the mic stand, and the sound on stage isn't really representative of probably what people are hearing out the front. In fact, it reminds me slightly of this when I hear it back.
Calling out around the world, are you ready for a brand new beat? Summer's here and the time is right for dancing in the street. Dance Chicago.
So I haven't bothered filming that gig, but I did want to talk about it because I actually set up a nice patch on the Quad Cortex. I decided, well, I've got the option here, why not, as I've got this Marshall amp here which I've been using on some other gigs with a switcher, I thought, well, wouldn't it be nice for my sort of lead sound to be a Marshall sound? So I set up a patch where I've got the Marshall for lead stuff, and I've got a, it's not a Fender, I was about to say Fender, but I've got my car amp which I imaged, what's the word they use, captured myself, which is a nice sound, so I use that, kicking the Marshall for soloing. I need to do a bit of tweaking because the reverbs acts a bit differently on each amp, but anyway, it was a pretty good sound and it was in my ears, and you know, it's not a bad sound. But now this is a question I'd like the answer to. Now leave me a comment if you think of this one. Have you ever gone from using your modeler to plugging in your amp and going, oh actually I think I prefer the modeler? Because I haven't, because whenever I plug the amp in I think, oh, that's so much nicer. And it's interesting, I was just listening to the Nuno Betancourt being interviewed on Corey Wong's Wong Note podcast, and he was saying about how he uses a Kemper in the studio and he thinks, oh, this sounds fantastic, I'm just going to leave it like this. He goes, actually no, let me plug the amp in. He plugs the amp in and it's always better. It's not as perfect, there's imperfections, the tubes might be rattling, there might be something there, but there's something about the imperfections and the, I don't know what it is, there's something about the air being moved on an amp that for me, I still prefer it, I'm afraid. So anyway, so you're not hearing a noiseless gig, I'm going to move straight onto the first gig with the footage. This first gig was in a pub in Chichester, which is on the in the south of England. Never played there before, and we walked in and it was one of those big pubs with football screens on every wall, and so drunken people shouting at the door, not being allowed in, 5 security. It was kind of like the places I used to play 30 years ago, but actually we won them over and it was quite a good gig and I enjoyed the playing. And on this gig, this is importantly, I'm using my Milkman amp, so I've gone from modeler no amp up to a nice lightweight amp, which is this one. What I do on this, as you may be able to see on the footage, is I've got my PA system, which is just a single column one, which I've done a video on before if you look it up. It's my JBL PRX1, which I mainly bought for acoustic guitar, but I've discovered it's loud enough to use just on its own for vocals with the band. And what I do is I've just got my mic going into it, so I take a feed out of the mix out straight into my in-ears, and I put one in-ear monitor in here so I can hear myself for singing, and I have my normal earplug in this ear so I can hear the rest of the band like I normally do, and it's quite a good compromise without having to bring a floor wedge and the advantages of an in-ear monitor. Anyway, see what you think of this sound. This first track is stuck in the middle, so a relatively clean sound. So see what you think of the sound on here. This second track, slightly more driven sound with the wah-wah. You'll hear some ridiculous buzzing coming out as I kick some of the pedals in. I think there must have been sort of some strip lighting or some light dimmers or something that was interfering with my amp, but once I start playing you can't hear it anyway, so I wasn't too worried. But this one is Move On Up. In the second set I switched to my 335. Now this is the outro solo from Long Train Running. It's all over one chord, and I think by this point in the evening I'm probably fed up with listening to my own guitar solo, so I started doing some rather silly things, and I started off with a bit of totally pointless tapping. This EVH guitar, oh, it's just out of shot, my EVH Wolfgang, which I've done loads of videos on. Look back over them over the last few months. Since I've got that, I've absolutely got back into guitar playing, and I've started practicing finger tapping. I never used to do finger tapping on gigs, but it's crept in. It's changed me, that guitar. Anyway, see what you think of this. This is a bit more of a driven sound and some silly playing. On to the next gig. Now really what I want you to let me know here is what you think of the sound. I'm using my Vibra King, which is, it weighs an absolute ton, that amp. I'm not quite sure what it is. I think it's 70 something pounds. It's got 3 10-inch speakers in, and it's got massive transformers in. It's got the reverb built in, which is the same as the reverb that Fender bring out as a standalone unit. And it sounds fantastic, but I don't gig it really much anymore because it weighs so much. But this gig I'm about to show you, it's my regular gig. If you've watched my gig diaries before, you'll have seen that I play here quite regularly with a band called The Usual. But this evening was slightly unusual because Johnny, the keyboard player, wasn't available, and it was Sam and Bo who were playing with me the night before, but with Josh singing. So it's a different gig for me because I'm not having to sing in front of the band, so I can just concentrate on the guitar playing. So we had Josh. So if you see him on this video, he's got a new look. He looks a bit like Freddie Mercury, which is funny because he hasn't intentionally done that. It's just sort of happened, and if anyone can pull it off, it's him. And we had another singer, bonus singer, who was filling in instead of another singer instead of a keyboard player called Jess. So it was a really good night. But I want you to have a listen, see what you think of this amp. Now, I knew it was a fairly easy get in, and I've got a nice new trolley, so I was able to take my heavier amp. Once I've got it down the stairs at home, I can feel my spine compressing, it's so heavy. I put it on my new trolley and I got it into the gig, but I really enjoyed playing through that amp. I mean, the Milkman sounds great, but that amp, it breaks up a bit earlier, and I don't know, it's about all the air being moved by 3 10-inch speakers. It's really nice, but I'd like to know what you think, so let me know what you think after you've heard this. The first song I'm going to play you, this is a solo from Signed Sealed, delivered by Stevie Wonder. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please let me know what you think of the sounds of the 2 different amps. I mean, I think they both sound good. I think it's more to do with the feel of standing next to this big amp. It wasn't any louder. In fact, I think I played quieter through the bigger amp on the second night, but something about all that air moving, it was really nice. I didn't play the 335 through it this time, actually, but if you watched last week's video, I think it was, I did play my 335 through the Vibra King then, because I did take it last week as well. So please hit like, hit subscribe if you wish. I'm bringing out new videos 7 PM UK time every Friday, and I'm going to leave you with one more solo. This is Over Everywhere by Fleetwood Mac, and on this one I've got the chorus turned on my Eventide H9, which I believe is a chorusy sound coming off there. One of the algorithms of the H910 original Eventide unit. I think it's that. It was like a Van Halen-y spreader thing, but I like the chorusing kind of effect on it. So I hope you like the sound, and I hope to see you next week.